Well, guys, who's cutting onions around here? Showtime, folks. Guys, welcome to our first top 10. And today, for Chuco's first top 10, as tragic as it sounds, we're going to do our first top 10 saddest movie moments. Now, these are moments that I think have hit me the hardest as far as being sad. They are not the only moments I think are sad in movies, but they are the ones that have stood out to me. And throughout my, movie viewing journey, and for people that are really interested in going to watch a movie that's it's just gonna hit you right in the soul. You know what I mean? This is a list for you. Now, this is just my list. It's not the right list. It's not anybody else's list. It's just based off of, like I said, my experience with watching movies. And it's just something that stood out to me. The idea came to me through somebody. They recommended. They're like, "Well, what movies make you sad?" And I was like, "None of them make me sad." But you know what I mean. I was joking around with them, but it got me thinking. Certain things that have stood out in my brain and in my soul when it's come to movie moments in history. And so we're gonna go ahead and get started on it. I ranked it, just based on personal preference. So if you agree with my thoughts or disagree with my thoughts, make sure to leave them down below and make your own list below. Or if there's a movie you think that I may have missed, I probably have, because there's a lot of tragic movies out there. But that we can save that for a list later in the future. So we're going to go ahead and get started, guys. Also, I just want to go ahead and give a spoiler warning for this video, because we're going to be talking about major plot points in these movies. So just know that there are spoilers in this coming list, okay? We're going to be talking about major deaths. So starting off at number 10, we have Guidos' death in Life is Beautiful. Now, guys, honestly, I don't even remember who recommended Life is Beautiful to me. I do know it was a teacher of mine, but I was a very, very young boy whenever it was recommended to me. This had to have been in second grade or somewhere around there, and I remember it sticking out to me because they told me, watch Life is Beautiful. We may have even seen it in class. I don't know if it is all that explicit. It's been a while since I've seen this one, but that goes to show just how tragic this movie is. You follow Guido, who's a dad, and he has his storybook romance that happens right in the beginning. He gets his family. And then this movie takes place in the 1940s in Europe, and we know what happened during that period of time. And unfortunately, Guido gets caught up in that. The story revolves primarily around Guido, who tries to make all the situations around him and his son seem bearable, seem livable, and he's trying to distract his son from the things that are going on around him. And what makes this so tragic is, to the very end of this film, Guido understands the situation of what's going on around him. He knows what's about to happen to him. And even in his final moments where he hides his son, he plays it off as a game that is happening. When a soldier has a weapon pointed at his back, he marches off mockingly in an attempt to make his son think that it's all a game. And whenever he turns a corner and you hear a gunshot go off, and only the soldier returns. Yep, it's a tragic movie moment. And the only reason I have it ranked at 10 is because once you understand where this movie takes place and when this movie takes place, it's likely not going to be a good ending. So it's one of those movies that you can go in there prepared to know that this is going to be a tragic movie in some sense. And if you're going into it knowing it's going to be sad, I feel like it kind of softens the blow a little bit. But this is one of those movie moments that even my little brother, who doesn't really talk to me about movies all that much, he always tells me to this day, he's like, "Remember when you told me to watch that movie? Man, that moment still sticks in my head." So yeah, at number 10, we have Guido's death from Life is Beautiful. You are who you choose to be. So at number 9, we have The Iron Giant Sacrifice. Now, When I was a kid, this was one of the staples in my household. I remember watching The Iron Giant for everything. If you've never seen The Iron Giant, you watch this child, develop a relationship with this giant robot, and as the movie goes on, the sarcasm, the jokes, the brotherly love that there is between this child and this robot just develops. But what we don't understand as kids is that there is a serious undertone, especially because of the Cold War at the time, about what this robot is really there to do. You rewatch it as an adult, you're like, whoa, okay, these are heavy themes, And as the movie goes on, there is that foreboding sense that something bad's going to happen, because you do see that the Iron Giant himself is capable of violence and chooses not to be what it's created for. And ultimately, it is the actions of a human that cause everybody to be in a situation where they're going to be destroyed. And rather than escape or sit back and let it watch, the Iron Giant decides that he knows what he has to do. And he flies up into space to stop the missile from hitting all the people. But before he does it, you see him close his eyes and accept his fate while he's listening to this quote of "You are who you choose to be." And he closes his eyes and he says, "Superman." Man, to this day, that gets me. It comes in at number 9 on my list because we know that the Iron Giant does not die in this instance, but still, just that moment, if it were to live in a vacuum, it has got to be one of the most tragic movie moments and one of the tragic decisions in all of my experiences as a child watching this movie. Just watching him close his eyes and thinking that was the end. Wow, that was... It's a sad movie moment, and that's one of the reasons it's number 9. At number 8, we've got Gatsby's Death from The Great Gatsby. Now, The Great Gatsby has got to be one of my favorite books, and honestly, the Leonardo DiCaprio version of The Great Gatsby has got to be one of my go-to movies. I really enjoy it. I know there is some controversy about the use of modern music in the 1920 settings. I know that there's certain, some people like the Robert Redford version better. Some people just want to, complain about whatever. But me personally, I like the Leonardo DiCaprio version. I don't see an issue with it. But we're not here to argue about the merits of the movie. We're here to talk about tragic movie moments. And Gatsby thinking that Daisy has called him at the end of the movie, wholeheartedly believing that he has done enough to secure her affection. While he swims alone in his pool, he hears the phone ringing, and DiCaprio's performance in this movie, I don't know what it is, man. Say what you want. I mean, just the way DiCaprio, plays it, he's a master of his craft. I gotta say, Leonardo DiCaprio's got to be one of my favorite actors. And just the way he goes about, portraying that the belief that he's about to ride off into the sunset with Daisy Buchanan. After he's shot, like the look on his face, you see the pain in his eyes and the realization of what's going on. And even in his final moments, he has hope that he's right, that his dream is still within grasp, just out of reach. And that is why Gatsby's Death in The Great Gatsby is number 8. And the reason it's not any higher is because he should have known. He should have known. I mean, man, I read the book and I've seen the movies, but man, Gatsby should have known she wasn't going to run off with him. And it makes me frustrated, man. I know there's a top 10 sad movie moments, but come on, Gatsby. But I digress. It's a tragic movie moment, and it's on this list. Coming in at number 7, we have Sam's Death in I Am Legend. Now, if you've never seen I Am Legend follows Will Smith's character who's trying to find a cure for these infected people. And he's essentially alone with him and his German Shepherd, Sam. Now, oh man. Say what you want about the entire movie or what, the legacy of Will Smith is in 2024. But watching Will Smith have to choke and kill his only companion, and that companion is a dog, being a dog person, Oh man, I'll never forget as he holds her and he's singing that everything's gonna be all right, and he's watching her turn into one of these infected things. And you just watch him. He can't even look at her. He's just looking up as he's. Don't even get me started. Don't even. Don't. It's number 7. For all the dog people, you get it. But Sam's death, number 7 on this list. Coming in at number 6 is something that I think is criminally underrated. I have never seen or heard other people talk about this movie, and oh my lord, if you've never seen this movie, I want you to click off this video, go watch it, and then come back. The Wrestler. And this comes down to the Ram and his final walkout in The Wrestler. Now, in this movie, we watch the Ram as life is just beating him down. He's at the end of his rope. He was a professional wrestler, and now he's on these small circuits, kind of just wrestling for nothing. Life just keeps kicking him while he's down, you know. He's just broke. He has an estranged relationship with his daughter, and he's just trying to find something to grab onto. And at the end of this film, he is returning from this heart injury, knowing that by wrestling, he is likely going to die. And you watch as Marissa Tomei's character, his love interest, rushes to try to stop him. And he says that, you know, the world doesn't care about him, and that the only place that anybody cares about him is in this wrestling world. And never ever else in my life has the beginning of Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses ever sounded so tragic than it does in this movie. Because as soon as you hear the intro to that song, you can see in Mickey Rourke's face, you know, in his presence and in the way he portrays his character, that he's made his decision of what he's going to do, no matter what it's going to cost him. And that has always stuck with me as a tragic movie moment. Just as soon as you hear Slash start to play that guitar, there's nothing left for the Ram, and he's going to go out there, and the rest is cinema history, at least in my book. And that's why this movie moment is on this list for me. So now getting into our top 5, and this one, oh man. Yeah, you know, I'm trying to get through this video a lot quicker because certain movie scenes hit a little bit harder than others do, and I just try not to think about it as much. End of Watch is one of those movies where it's just more of a personal tie that I have to individuals in law enforcement, that this movie hits so hard, it's just hard to talk about sometimes. And if you've never seen End of Watch, this is a movie about Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Peña's character, who are partners, and they work for the LAPD, or they work for the police department in California, or in Los Angeles primarily, and they are uncovering things that are making them prime targets for the cartel. And what you get in this movie is a lot of comedy. You get a big old bromance between Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Peña. You just get jokes that are really reminiscent of like the law enforcement community. Having grown up around a lot of law enforcement, you know, and just even from as a kid meeting different law enforcement individuals and them kind of, you know, shaping how I grew up, you see a lot of similarities and parallels between the characters of Jake Gyllenhaal and Michael Peña's characters, you know. And you see a lot of true to life kind of camaraderie, and you see them build it as the movie goes on. And the reason that this movie is on this list is, I'm supposed to pick a moment in this movie, and I'm sure everybody can tell what that moment is in this movie, and that is just the death of one of these officers. And I think the reason it hits me so hard primarily is because I've been to a funeral for law enforcement individuals. And guys, say what you want about anything that goes on in the world, but I hope that you never have to sit through a funeral for a law enforcement officer, because it is one of the most tragic experiences of my entire life. and I don't wish that upon anybody. This movie does a very, very excellent job of making you feel the pain that these characters go through. And it is truly, truly a tragic scene in this movie when one of the officers loses his life. I won't spoil who it is, but knowing that this is a top 10 tragic movie moment list or saddest scenes in movies, just know that this is, as uplifting as it is throughout the movie, it is a tragic, tragic end. And End of Watch is at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have Logan's Death in Logan. Now, guys, I remember when Logan released, I was a senior in high school, and it was one of the only movies, like I said, me and my brother don't go watch movies together all that often, but it was one of the only movies that my brother was like, yeah, I want to go watch this with you. And this is a culmination of nearly 2 decades of X-Men movies right here. This was Logan, and we knew this was the end no matter what. They said, well, at least they said at the time that this was it. This was Hugh Jackman's last hurrah as the Wolverine. This was Patrick Stewart's last time as Professor Xavier. And guys, the movie you get is just this grounded, broken down version of Logan. And oh man, when I remember seeing this, I had gotten out of school, went to see this, and watching Logan's final stand, what I thought at the time was his final stand, it has to be one of the most tragic movie moments, because this was my childhood hero at the end of his rope. This was the end of the line for him, and I'll never forget him laying on that log impaled, just saying his final words. It's like he's talking to all of us who grew up watching him, and just watching him die on that log was just one of those things where man, that one hit hard. The reason it's lower on my list now is just recency bias. I mean, it didn't completely tarnish the way you look at Logan, but Deadpool and Wolverine brought back Hugh Jackman, so I got to see him at least one more time as the Wolverine, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the tragedy that was Logan as a film is the reason that it gets on this list. I mean, just the death of Logan. Charles Xavier's up there. Don't get me wrong. The death of Charles Xavier is up there as well. But the death of Logan, just after just watching for film after film, him wanting to die, him wanting to, just find some kind of release from this existence that he's had of just pure pain and suffering, for him to finally get there by redeeming himself, by just wanting to do one last good thing. It was just so tragic. And it's just, one of those things where he was never the right guy for the job until he was. And it was just so tragic. So that's why Logan is number 4 on my list. Coming in at number 3, The Iron Claw. Carrie's death in The Iron Claw, to be specific. Now, this whole movie is tragic. Now, going into this movie, I had no idea what I was in for. You know what I mean? I knew a little bit about the Von Erich story, just enough from what I'd heard. I was a big wrestling fan, but even then, I didn't know anything about the Von Erich family before going into this movie. And oh my God, this movie hits like a freight train. Especially if you have siblings and if you're a big brother like I am. Wow, this movie just... I don't like to say this about movies if it's not true, but this movie will break you. It doesn't matter who you are. Man, this one was just tough to get through. I mean, right in the beginning, you got yourself something that is, at least reasonably fun, when you're trying to learn the family dynamics and whatnot. But once this movie starts hitting you with the emotional gut punches, it does not stop, and it does not pull any of those punches. I saw this movie like 3 times, and each time that I saw it, it still got me. Specific lines. Zac Efron's performance in this movie is just one of those things that I think people slept on. people probably sleep on Zac Efron's acting ability a lot of the time. Like, at least I know I'm guilty of that. But oh my God, in this movie, this, in all honesty, the reason I started making YouTube videos was because of movies like this. I saw this one and nobody else wanted to talk about it. And I was distraught. And this one is not for the faint of heart. I mean, if you know anything about the Von Erich family, then you go in kind of knowing what kind of tragedy awaits. But I think this movie is best experienced if you know absolutely nothing about it. And if you're watching this list and you know now what's going to happen to one of the brothers, it still is not going to prepare you for the performances in this movie. It was something special. It was something that I didn't think would happen when I went into this movie. And it's something that still lingers with me to this day. The reason it comes in at number 3 for me is probably just because I have a little bit of recency bias because it came out a little bit more recently than other movies on this list. But not by much. If not, this might be my number 1. Just as a sibling, as a big brother, this is definitely a hard one. And coming in at number 2 is The Death of Apollo Creed, Rocky IV. This one flip-flopped for me. I had a really hard time deciding what number 1 or number 2 was going to be for saddest movie moments for me. The Death of Apollo Creed just kind of sat in my core for a lot of my childhood. You know, this was the first, I always tell, when I tell the story of Apollo Creed, this was the first movie moment in my entire life, even as a child. I remember this was the first death that shocked my soul. I remember my dad showing me Rocky IV, and having shown me all the other Rockies leading up to Rocky IV, when Apollo Creed is going to fight Ivan Drago, I thought, you know, these are Rocky movies. This is Apollo is the hero in this situation. He's going to be fine. And to see a hero, my hero at that, you know, at that point in the movie, die, just not giving up, just he's taking his beating, and he turns and he looks at Rocky Balboa and says, no matter what, you're not going to stop this fight. After all that they've been through together, and just to see him fall in the ring to go out on his shield, it broke my soul as a kid, you know what I mean? And to this day, I always remember that moment. That was the first movie moment ever in any movie to hurt me like that. And I had the honor about a year or so back, actually almost exactly a year before he passed away, to meet Carl Weathers, and I told him about this, and he, you know, I got to express my gratitude towards him for you know, introducing me to my love of movies and for being one of the heroes that I had in a movie. Because although, you know, the movie Rocky is obviously Rocky's story, I think Apollo has a big impact on how Rocky grows as a person. I mean, obviously he trains him in Rocky 3, and then in Rocky 4 we see him meet his demise. But I was happy that I got to share that experience and be able to talk to Carl Weathers about it, and hopefully he rests in peace. And at least for me, it is enough to be my number 2 on this list, because it just shocked me to my core. And to this day, I have something signed that says there is no tomorrow, and I cherish that piece of movie memorabilia here at Guidos Powerhouse Cinema. But guys, at number 1, and like I said, this was a tough decision between 1 and 2. Number 1 saddest movie moment, at least for me, and again, it stems from me being a kid and having seen this movie when I was young, is John Coffey on the Green Mile and his death. I remember seeing this and not understanding. I had no idea why he had to die. You know, even when they offer him a way out, John Coffey decides it's time to go, you know, that he's tired of the pain of the world. And I just remember being a kid seeing Michael Clark Duncan's performance in this movie, and just, it hurt, it broke, it hurt my soul, as my brother would say. It was one of those things where I saw this movie and I didn't understand. You see all the guards understanding that this is an innocent man that's being put to death, and he's not a he has this childlike aura to him of just pure good, somebody that's pure of heart, that is just going to be killed because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And as the Green Mile progresses, you understand that this character is just nothing but pure good, and he's ultimately destroyed. I mean, he's ultimately killed for something he didn't do. And unlike our number 2 entry, the movie ends with his death. There is nothing to hang your hat on. Sure, he teaches Tom Hanks' character a life lesson, and Tom Hanks tells his story, but he is 100% a pure character, a pure good character, and ultimately, I think that's why the death of Coffee is number 1 on saddest movie moments. But with that, guys, is our first top 10. But what did you guys think? Did you agree with some of these picks? Do you disagree with some of our picks? Or do you think there's other movies that I should have included whenever picking saddest movie moments for Chugo's Powerhouse Cinema? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you like and share this video. Or if you want to see some more from good old Chugo, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe. Be looking out for future top 10s, and I hope to see you guys soon. But if you're ever in a down mood, always remember something my friend Apollo Creed used to tell me, and that's